watching news at Prime. Let's get into this discussion now. And there's been mixed reaction to expelled South African ambassador to the United States, Ebrahim Rasool's homecoming speech today. He says he has no regrets over comments he made leading to his expulsion, but he has also called on the country to keep its dignity while mending relations with Washington. Let's speak now to ANC veteran Reverend Frank Chikane, who talks to us from Johannesburg this evening. Reverend, good evening to you, and thank you as always for your time. Let's start with that homecoming. The airport filled to the brim, if I could call it that, with people welcoming home the expelled South African ambassador to the United States. What are your thoughts about what you saw this morning?
Well, I saw it after the fact because I was in church. And I must say, I expected it to happen. People love our brother Rasool, and they respect him, and they thought, given the circumstances, he deserved to be welcomed in a proper way. And that's the best they thought would give him the proper reception.
Yeah.
And I would have been surprised if they didn't actually. It would be strange. So that's normal for me. It's a family matter.
Yeah.
You know, even if there were problems where you come from, but when you come back home, you get welcomed in a special way.
Yeah. Let's try and get to grips with some of what he has had to say and his language, particularly in this period where the preoccupation, it would seem, at least in the media space, it is that the speculation over who will replace him. Perhaps let's start the conversation there, because he is of the view that South Africa should not kowtow to this expectation that there needs to be a white ambassador for a white president. You go along with his thoughts, do you?
Well, I must say that I don't understand why this matter is so urgent, because the president has said so through his spokesperson that they're not going to rush into this matter. It's too serious to rush. The president must think through it, must reflect on it, reflect on the relationship with the United States, and make a decision. This idea that people will throw names around, actually it's embarrassing, because I saw it on the news earlier just now, where they've got 3 white South Africans as people they think would be the ones to represent South Africa. I think it's just a wrong approach. It's sectarian, it borders on racism. What we need in terms of representation of South Africa, it's a person who is going to represent South Africa as a whole, not a faction or a party or a particular perspective. Because if you send a person with a particular perspective and view, that person will not represent South Africa. So I'm hoping that when we come to it, and we must take our time to think through it, the president will be able to find a person who will represent the interests of South Africans as a whole, not a particular group of people or racial group. I think it's a wrong approach. We're trying to build a society that's not based on race or color. We are building a society where people become South Africans and they become equal before the law.
Yeah.
And that's why the Constitution says we must correct the injustices of the past, the inequalities of the past, so that as South Africans, we can relate to each other as South Africans, not as white and black. And the country we go to should not determine what color of a person comes there. I think it's wrong. Let's become South Africans. And I think in the last 2 years or so, we've been drifting away from each other. We worked hard for social cohesion, and we need to go back to that project and work for social cohesion, not racist party perspectives. I don't think that will help the country at all.
Ambassador Rasool also talks about a language of transsectionality that exists right now in the White House. How does South Africa deal with an administration whose language is exactly what he describes, a language of transactionality?
You know, as a country, we need to be strategic. When we took over in 1994 as a non-racial democratic government, and I joined the government about November 1995, the language there was, we have not had a good relationship with the United States or with the UK. I mean, they all supported the apartheid system. They helped the apartheid system to develop nuclear weapons. And we worked with the people of the United States to get the law, the anti-apartheid law, passed and implemented, whilst the White House was opposed to that position. And so we knew that when we became government, and we decided the language that was used then was, we must manage the relationship with the United States. We will differ in many respects, like we do differ in many respects, but we agree on many other things. So we need to manage it. The fact that you differ doesn't mean that you should fight with each other. If they use a transactional approach, we're going to have to strategically manage that type of a relationship. But let me say what I really wish could happen, that both the US and South Africa will return back to the diplomatic channels rather than communicating through the media, Twitter, and etc. I don't think that's how democracy is managed. I mean, what diplomacy is managed. Diplomatic approach means talking to each other, means talking through the ambassadors, the officials that are there, or delegations, or envoys, and so that you make decisions that are intelligent and well-informed.
Yeah.
Can
I challenge you a little bit there, Reverend? And I'm sorry to interrupt you. Allow me to interrupt your thought process there. When you say you hope that there is a return to diplomatic channels, I wonder if you genuinely are convinced that this is an administration that is committed to that, because even when they do convene media conferences, or be it welcoming a president of another country in the White House, that person is dressed down through the cameras of media rolling, including whether there has been really thoroughgoing conversations. It would seem that everything is done either through the glare of cameras or through social media platforms. That is the order of the day. Is it possible to return to a language of diplomacy in what clearly is a complete changed culture of diplomacy in the White House?
Well, we must not be redefined. Our character and nature should not be redefined by Washington. The relationship between states is through diplomatic processes. There's no other. The other way is fighting each other, and that's not what we are. South Africa is not a country that's going to spend time fighting others in any way. A peaceful way of coexistence is the best way to have peace in the world, and will maintain that position. So we shouldn't deviate from using the diplomatic channels, because through the diplomatic channels, you exchange views, you deal with issues. Before delegations meet, you already have looked at the issues. And as you know, in the tradition of diplomacy and relationships between countries, it will be officials and then ministers and then the presidents.
Yeah.
I mean, the president don't just go and meet without preparation and hope that in that meeting they will produce solutions. I think we need to maintain that. Whatever happens in Washington, we should keep our cool and do the right thing. And where we differ, we should actually agree that there are differences and then agree on how you manage those differences.
Yeah.
We can't be the United States and the United States can't be South Africa.
Right.
Let me just make an example. I mean, when we interacted, I was in government during that time. There's a time when we sent a delegation and it interacted with the team in Washington. And one of them said, you know, the problem with South Africa is that they are right most of the time, but unfortunately it doesn't go with our policy. So the South African position is that international law is critical, respect of each other is critical, and justice is justice. The way you treat whites, you must treat blacks. The way you treat Palestinians, you must treat Americans. So there mustn't be a different standard that this is the way the Americans must be treated and this is the way Palestinians must be treated. I think it's a question of justice.
Yeah.
And justice doesn't change. It doesn't matter which country, what power, what government it's in place. The issues of justice don't change. For instance, the issue of the Genocide Convention, UN Genocide Convention, can't change. It's adopted by the UN. The US and others supported it. And therefore, you can't say, let's work outside that law.
All right.
Without changing it. And I think it's a position that's important because international relations are meant, UN was created to make sure there's peace between countries, and we can't act in a way that actually create conflict in the world.
Reverend Chikane, I want to thank you very much for your time, a veteran of the African National Congress and a long-serving member of the South African government, as you have heard him recollect some of the time. All right.